She laughed like I didn't exist. I was standing behind the thin drywall, holding my breath, hands still wet from the faucet I forgot to turn off. It wasn't supposed to be a long trip to the kitchen. I just wanted water. Maybe a snack. Instead, I got a bullet between the ribs, disguised as a conversation I was never meant to hear. I can't stand being married to him. Her voice. Clear. Calm. Casual. No hesitation. He just sucks the energy out of every room. Another laugh. Not nervous. Not forced. That kind of laugh people make when they're comfortable being cruel. I stared at the wall like it would melt and show me who she was talking to. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I counted every word. It's like living with wallpaper. Beige, boring, predictable wallpaper. I had been in the kitchen for 30 seconds. 30 seconds. That's all it took to break the illusion I had been clinging to for years. She wasn't venting. She was confessing. And it wasn't to a friend. The voice that responded was male. Smooth. Confident. Close. You deserve someone who excites you. She agreed. Quickly. Exactly. I need to feel alive again. The glass I was holding started to sweat in my hand. Or maybe it was me. I backed up a step. Then another. I didn't know whether I was going to throw up, cry, or collapse right there by the fridge. I didn't do any of those things. I walked out the back door in my socks and didn't even shut it behind me. No keys. No coat. No phone. No goodbye. I walked 3 blocks before I realized it was raining. That's how the unraveling started. Not with a fight, or a tearful confession, or even a suspicion. Just a moment. A sentence. A truth I wasn't supposed to hear. And when I finally came back the next day, the part that really shredded me. She pretended she didn't notice I'd been gone. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the booth of an all-night diner 3 blocks away, dripping rainwater onto the cracked vinyl seat, while the waitress kept pouring me refills I didn't touch. My socks were soaked, my phone was buzzing somewhere back at the house, and I was staring out the window like the answers were hiding in the reflection of flickering neon signs. I must have looked insane. Some wet guy in pajama pants and no shoes, shivering under fluorescent lights, whispering apologies to nobody. But what do you do when your entire marriage gets reduced to a single overheard sentence? Do you wait for context? Do you pretend you misheard? Or do you finally admit to yourself that the quiet doubts you've had, the ones you've buried under date nights and anniversary posts, were right all along? She didn't love me. Not in the way you're supposed to love a husband. Maybe she hadn't for years. At 6:12 a.m., I walked back to the house. The door was still unlocked, exactly how I left it. Her keys were on the counter. Her purse was in the chair. And her voice, gone. I checked the bedroom. Empty. I didn't even know where she'd gone. Maybe she left to be with him. Maybe she never went to bed at all. I didn't ask. I didn't wait. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen table and wrote a note. Not a dramatic one. Not even angry. Just a single page, folded once, with my handwriting shaking across the lines. You didn't know I was in the next room. But now I know who I've been living with. That's it. I left it beside her cold cup of coffee and walked out again, this time with shoes and my wallet. Still no phone. Still no goodbye. I stayed in my friend Kyle's basement for 3 days. He didn't ask many questions. He's a divorced guy, so he understood the silence. I slept on his futon, staring at the ceiling fan, reliving every fake smile and awkward silence I'd ignored over the last year. On the 4th day, I turned my phone back on. 12 missed calls, 14 texts, 1 voicemail, but none of it sounded like a woman who'd been caught. None of it said, "We need to talk," or "I'm sorry." No mention of that night. No sign she even found the note. All she wrote was, "Hey, can you grab oat milk if you come home today? Also, thermostat's acting weird again." It was like I had vanished, and she hadn't even noticed. That's when I realized her reaction wasn't silence. It was indifference. And that hurt more than anything she said on that call. I didn't go home for another 5 days after that message about oat milk. Not because I had a plan. Not because I wanted to punish her. Honestly, I just didn't know what to do with the version of her that existed in my head now. How do you walk back into a house when you've realized you were never actually invited to stay? I wasn't ready. But Kyle had a new girlfriend staying over, and I could feel I was wearing out my welcome. So I drove back to the house around 8 p.m. On a Tuesday, slow, like it might catch fire if I looked at it too directly. The porch light was on. That small detail hit me like a hammer. It meant she still expected me to come home. Like I was just late from work. Like I hadn't overheard her telling another man that being married to me felt like suffocating under a weighted blanket of beige. I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was that my shoes were gone from the hallway. The second? The framed picture of us from our trip to the Grand Tetons, removed from the wall. Not replaced. Just gone. A rectangle of cleaner paint where it used to hang. Then I walked into the kitchen and found a second coffee mug beside hers. 2 teaspoons in the sink. One of my beers missing from the fridge. That beer stung. She doesn't drink my beer. She says it tastes like sock water. So either she suddenly developed a taste for it, or someone else had been comfortable enough to help themselves. I didn't ask. I didn't leave, either. I just went to the bedroom. Hours. And sat on the edge of the bed, wondering how long you could live in a house before realizing none of it was built for you. She came in an hour later, casual as ever, holding a bag of groceries and talking into her AirPods. Didn't even flinch when she saw me. "Hey," she said. "You're back." Just like that. No mention of the note. No hint of guilt. No trace of tension. I nodded. Couldn't even speak. My jaw was tight, and my heart was louder than my thoughts. She unpacked her groceries and asked me how Kyle was doing, like I'd just come home from a fishing trip, not from exile. But then I saw it, her eyes. They didn't widen in surprise when she saw me, but they did shift for half a second toward her phone. And for that one flicker of a moment, I realized something. She wasn't relieved I was back. She was calculating how fast she could delete something. I waited until she went to bed, pretending to fall asleep next to me. That's when I slipped out of the room, grabbed her phone from the kitchen counter, and opened the messages. She'd recently deleted her entire chat history with someone saved under the name Owen. Work. It was too clean. Too perfect. No messages. No photos. No call logs. Just an empty shell of a contact. But the phone had synced to our shared cloud account. She forgot that part. The next morning, I didn't confront her. I opened my laptop instead. I had to know just how deep the rot went. And within 1 hour, I learned more than I ever wanted to. And less than I needed to. I didn't want to go through her cloud backup. Honestly, I didn't. I stared at the screen for nearly 10 minutes, my finger hovering over the mouse, asking myself if ignorance might somehow still be kinder than confirmation. But it wasn't curiosity driving me anymore. It was survival. You don't recover from a slow emotional bleed like this unless you find the source and stop it, even if it means you don't like what you find. So I clicked. Photos loaded first. Hundreds of them. Most were ordinary. Work dinners, staged real estate pics, boring shots of plants and brunch. Then I saw a folder named Scans. Nothing suspicious about the name. Until I opened it. Inside were PDFs and screenshots. Things that looked administrative at first. But buried between what appeared to be property documents was a file simply named offer_RB. PDF. I clicked. My stomach turned. It wasn't for a property. It was a job offer. Out of state. Miami. And it wasn't for her. It was from her. To someone named Owen Buckner, confirming he'd be part of her new client development initiative starting in November. Housing provided. Expenses covered. Relocation bonus. No mention of me. Not one. I searched the rest of the cloud, hands shaking. Eventually, I found more. Voice notes, short clips, even a saved draft email she never sent. That one hit the hardest. The subject line read, "Clearing the air before you move." And the body began with, "I've told Calvin before that I'm not cut out for the kind of life he wants. He doesn't listen. He romanticizes struggle. I don't." There it was. My entire identity flattened into a footnote in someone else's escape plan. I stared at the screen in silence for what felt like an hour. That sentence played on loop. He romanticizes struggle. As if trying to build a future with someone who's slowly pulling away was a hobby of mine. As if sacrificing my own career flexibility to help her chase hers had been some kind of selfish fantasy. I didn't confront her that morning. I waited. I spent the rest of the day moving around the house like a ghost, noticing all the ways she'd already started separating her life from mine. The books she used to keep on our shared shelf, gone. The extra toothbrush in the bathroom drawer, missing. Our anniversary photo that used to sit on her desk, replaced with a framed quote about becoming your own home. That night, I told her I'd be out early in the morning for a job consult. She nodded without looking up from her laptop, and I left before sunrise. But I didn't go to a job site. I went to a lawyer. I didn't even know what I was asking for. I just knew I had to do something before she made her final move. before she erased me completely and left nothing but a coffee mug, a lease, and a 6-year gap in my life labeled irrelevant. The lawyer asked for her full name. I gave it. Then he asked something I didn't expect. Is the property in both your names? And that's when I remembered. It wasn't. The house, the car, the business account we technically shared, all in mine. She left me out of her plans. But she didn't realize how much of her life still depended on mine. Not yet. I never thought I'd be the type of guy to sit across from a lawyer with trembling hands, pretending I wasn't blinking too much to hide the sting behind my eyes. But that's where I was, in a gray office with fake wood panels, a water dispenser that made sad gurgling sounds, and a legal pad full of ugly truths. Turns out, while I had spent 6 years building trust, love, and memories, I'd also accidentally built myself the perfect exit strategy. The house was in my name. The joint account? Only one of us actually deposited into it. The car she drove? Leased under my credit. And while I never intended for it to be some kind of weapon, suddenly every forgotten form and unromantic decision I'd made had become my shield. She wanted to build a new life without me? Fine. But I wasn't going to fund it. I didn't tell her anything that day. I went home. Quiet. Normal. She was in the living room watching some HGTV episode like nothing had ever been fractured between us. She looked so calm, so smugly content. I swear if she had looked up and said, "Hey babe," I might have actually screamed. Instead, she barely glanced at me and asked, "Did you grab more oat milk?" That freaking oat milk again. I lied and said I forgot. She rolled her eyes, muttered something under her breath, and turned up the volume on the TV. I watched her from the kitchen doorway. Not in anger, not even in sadness this time, just observation. She looked exactly like the woman I married. Same long legs tucked under the throw blanket. Same robe she used to wear when we'd stay up late talking about traveling to Iceland. Same nail polish she always said reminded her of summer. But now, every single detail felt fake. Like I was watching someone perform the role of a wife, waiting for the curtain to fall so she could walk off stage and into someone else's arms. Later that night, when she went to take a bath and left her phone charging in the kitchen again, I plugged in a flash drive and backed up every document, message, and synced photo I could pull from her cloud folder. Not for revenge. For truth. For proof. For sanity. I needed to know that if I ever questioned my decision later, I'd have a record of exactly why I walked away. 2 days later, I met with a different lawyer, one who specialized in asset protection and silent separations. He called it a soft withdrawal. Basically, I would quietly begin removing access, change account logins, transfer funds, freeze cards, secure assets, one by one. No yelling, no announcements, just silence. The legal equivalent of fading into the shadows while taking the floor out from under her. That night, I started with the first step, disabling her access to the shared credit card she used to expense work lunches that were really date nights with Owen. At 9:42 p.m., she walked into the kitchen, holding her phone with a puzzled look. "Did the card get declined?" she asked, squinting like it was a glitch. I shrugged. Weird. Maybe the bank flagged something. She frowned. "You should call them." I nodded. "Yeah, I'll look into it." But I didn't. Because I knew exactly what transaction triggered the decline. 2 plane tickets to Miami for next month. One under her name. The other? Owen Buckner. She wasn't waiting to leave me. She was planning to take him into a life I had paid for. The next morning, I changed the locks. She still had no idea. The locks clicked into place the next morning before the sun was even up. I had a locksmith come while she was still asleep, knocked out with her noise machine, playing rain sounds, like she was at peace. Like she hadn't gutted me 3 times over and still expected me to bring in her oat milk and fold her laundry. I watched the guy remove the old hardware and install a digital keypad. The code was mine. I didn't give her one. Not yet. I told myself it was temporary. Just in case. Just for now. But deep down, I knew. This was me drawing a line in invisible ink. The kind only shows up when everything goes dark. She didn't notice it right away, which told me how checked out she really was. She left for her gym class like nothing had changed. Came back around 11 o'clock, talking on speakerphone about yoga mats and somebody's engagement. Then it happened. I heard the sound. The rattle of the key in the front door. Pause. Another try. Longer pause. Then a knock. A soft one. At first. Then a louder one. "Cal?" she called through the door. Did you change the locks? I opened it slowly, just enough to look her in the eye. She was holding her gym bag in one hand and her phone in the other, a bead of sweat running down her temple, confusion plastered across her face. I had them rekeyed, I said quietly. Security reasons. She blinked. Without telling me, I stepped aside and let her in. I didn't think it mattered. That's all I said. I walked into the kitchen and started unloading the dishwasher like nothing was out of place. I could feel her standing behind me, like she was trying to decide if she should explode or play it cool. She chose passive aggression. Okay, weird. Kinda creepy. Noted, she muttered, walking past me. You could have at least told me. I live here too. Do you? I wanted to ask. Do you still live here, or are you just rehearsing until your real life starts? But I didn't say it. I just nodded and said, you can have a coat if you want. She didn't answer. For the next 2 days, she became jittery. She started looking at her phone less in front of me, hiding it when I entered the room. Her laptop, once always left open on the counter, was now locked and shut. She stopped using the shared desktop entirely. I could feel her pulling her digital life into her arms like a purse about to be stolen. She could feel the shift. I was no longer the background husband who'd quietly absorb her dissatisfaction. I was doing something. She just didn't know what. She tried to test the water. That night, she cooked dinner, something she hadn't done in a month, and set the table for 2. Candles. Her robe. Her smile. Thought we could have a real night, she said. Catch up. Catch up. I sat down, picked at the food, and listened to her talk about trivial things, TV shows, her friend Marcy's divorce, a listing she was trying to land in Hillcrest. I didn't mention Miami, or Owen, or the relocation package she pretended didn't exist. I just smiled and asked her how long she planned to keep pretending I didn't matter. Her fork froze in midair. What? I didn't repeat it. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, voice going soft, defensive, but not innocent. I stood up. Don't worry. You will. And I walked out to the guest room, locked the door, and left her sitting at a dinner table set for 2 people who no longer existed. The next morning, she tried to access the shared business account. The password had been changed. That was the first time she raised her voice in weeks. What is going on? She snapped, cornering me in the hallway like I owed her an explanation for finally acting like I had a spine. You made your plans, I said calmly. Now I'm making mine. And for the first time since this all started, she looked afraid. Not because I yelled, not because I threatened, but because I didn't. And she knew me well enough to understand what that meant. I don't think it really hit her until that Friday morning. That's when her world finally started to crack. The world she had carefully constructed behind my back, brick by brick, lie by lie, like I was too dumb to hear the echo of my own name being erased. It started with her card declining at the salon. She texted me about it, 3 messages in a row, all increasingly frantic, ending with, "Why is my money frozen?" She still called it hers. Like she hadn't stopped contributing months ago. Like I hadn't paid the mortgage, the car note, the insurance, the groceries. All while she was flying out to real estate conferences with Owen and writing it off as networking. I didn't respond. That afternoon, she tried to log into the shared Dropbox account we'd used for years to store receipts, documents, photos, and contracts. Access denied. She called me this time. Twice. I watched the screen light up from across the kitchen table, her name flashing like a siren I refused to hear. I didn't answer. Just let it ring while I sipped coffee and stared at the front door, wondering how long it would take for her to use the key she still didn't know didn't work anymore. She came home 40 minutes later, stormed in, slammed her purse onto the counter like she was trying to summon a fight. I didn't give her one. I need access to the account, she snapped, bypassing any pretense of warmth or civility. Which one? I asked, not because I didn't know, but because I wanted her to say it. To acknowledge the thing she thought she could steal from me quietly while smiling to my face. She stared at me, mouth opening, then closing. I know what you're doing, she said finally. And it's cruel. Cruel. That word rolled off her tongue like she hadn't emotionally exiled me for a year while planning her new life in a new city with a new man. All while using my roof, my money, and my name to keep everything looking stable on the outside. Cruel? I almost laughed. Instead, I stood up, walked to the drawer, and pulled out the folder I'd been keeping since the day I backed up her cloud. I slid it across the table. She didn't reach for it. just stared at the manila tab like it might burn her fingers. Miami, I said. Plane tickets. Lease agreements. A bonus clause. Still, she said nothing. And Owen, I added, twisting the knife just enough. I didn't even know his last name until I saw the relocation offer you drafted. So thanks for that. She finally sat down. And for the first time since this started, she looked like she didn't know how to fake a face. Her confidence, her casual cruelty, gone. She was just a person now. And suddenly, the silence between us felt louder than every argument we never had. I spoke slowly, deliberately. You didn't cheat because you were confused. You didn't lie because you were scared. You knew exactly what you were doing. You made a new life while keeping your foot in the old one. You waited until your runway was clear, until he had a job lined up and I was still paying your way. And then you were going to leave. Not with regret, but with relief. Still, she didn't defend herself, which somehow made it worse. I loved you, I said, finally letting my voice shake. I would have fought for us. I would have gone to therapy. I would have moved if that's what you needed. I bent in every direction you pushed. I gave you space, time, trust. I gave you everything I could think of. She was crying now, but the quiet kind. The kind you cry when you realize the performance is over and the audience has already walked out. You don't get to cry now, I whispered. You don't get to mourn what you planned to abandon. She wiped her eyes, still silent. And that was the moment I knew. Not that she was sorry, but that she had never expected to lose. She thought I'd break, that I'd beg, that I'd offer more, twist further, lower myself just a little deeper to make her stay. Because that's who I'd been. Until now. She started to speak, maybe to apologize, maybe to justify, maybe to lie one more time. But I was already walking away. And this time, I wasn't just leaving the room. I was leaving the version of myself she thought she owned. She didn't try to stop me that night. No dramatic chase scene. No screaming apologies. No, please don't go. Just the quiet sound of a woman realizing her exit plan had been intercepted, and now she was the one being left behind. She sat on the edge of the table where I'd slid the folder of her own betrayal. Still, small, alone. I slept in the guest room again, but it didn't feel like defeat anymore. It felt like preparation. By morning, I had a lawyer draft the separation notice. I didn't serve it with venom or a smirk. I simply folded it into an envelope, left it beside her untouched coffee, and walked out. This time, I took my suitcase, my hard drives, and every last trace of myself that she had taken for granted. She didn't message me for 2 days. Then, like clockwork, came the first email. Can we talk? Please. No mention of what she'd done. No acknowledgement of Owen. Just that same vague panic people feel when they realize the elevator door they expected to hold open has already shut. I didn't reply. The second email came a week later. Longer. Messier. The kind of word vomit that screams desperation but still doesn't taste like truth. She said she was confused, that she didn't know what she was thinking, that things got too fast too quickly with him and she lost sight of what mattered. No apology. Just rewrites of history. I never responded. But I read every word, twice. And I'll admit it, a part of me wanted to forgive her. Not to take her back. Not even to comfort her. Just to feel needed again. That pathetic instinct in me. The one that used to hand her the bigger slice. The last bite. The charger when hers was low. It still wanted to matter. But then I remembered something. She already showed me what I was worth to her when she thought I wasn't listening. I moved into a short-term rental 2 towns over. Small place. Minimal furniture. No pictures on the walls. Just silence and space. The first few nights, I felt like I'd crawled out of my own skin. The next few, I started breathing again. A month passed. Then another. And slowly, things started coming back to life. I reconnected with Kyle. Turns out he had a friend who needed help with soundproofing a boutique recording studio. That project led to another. Then another. And suddenly, I wasn't freelancing out of desperation anymore. I was choosing the work I wanted on my own terms. I got a therapist, too. At first I told her I just needed clarity. 3 sessions in, I admitted I needed to understand why I had let someone shrink me for so long, just because I was scared to be alone. That was the turning point. And here's the part one never expected to say. I'm not angry anymore. I don't daydream about revenge. I don't stalk her socials. I don't wonder how she's doing with Owen, or if he ever even made it to Miami. Because the truth is, she doesn't get to know who I became after her. She doesn't get access to the version of me who wakes up now without dread in his chest. The man who no longer checks his phone with panic. Who doesn't rehearse conversations in his head to keep someone else happy. Who doesn't shrink himself just to avoid rocking the boat. She doesn't get him. I do. And I'm finally learning that's enough.